And now consider Tar, the art house sort of hit and critics' pick darling of 2022, which boldly asks the question, can you make in 2022 a quote-unquote nuanced but also stiflingly on the nose, if you're not yourself a critic who only actually engages with award screeners during voting season these days, film about the supposed fallout of a Me Too scandal in the creative arts community vis-a-vis weighing the harm done by an accused person versus an undeniably mighty contribution to the culture by the accused themselves and their own individual humanity, while also making a component of said individual's humanity pre-existing all too eagerness to rail against the boogeyman of politically correct wokeness that will be their downfall in order to keep your audience on the same page and get fawning reviews free from attack by those same mostly imaginary boogie persons if you cleverly subvert nearly every extant real-life story you're referencing by making your morally complicated main character under accusation a woman herself? And the answer to that question is, of course not. She also needs to be played by Cate Blanchett. In any case, playing out very much like a thought experiment to imagine what circa 1990s David Mamet might have turned out if he'd been more of a snarky aggrieved lesbian rather than just a whiny bitch, Tar follows Blanchett as a world-renowned orchestra conductor specializing in Gustav Mahler, who, on the precipice of completing a concert recording cycle on a book tour that will cement her hard-fought legacy as the champion in her field, finds herself, her wife, her assistants, and other associates being stalked by a literal and figurative shadow of her past sin come back to wreck up the place. Specifically, having to start throwing her weight around, replacing various chairs and political players at work, has people pushing back about how she's not as clever as she apparently thought she was about concealing how she favors the younger, prettier girls who might fancy a private lesson for advancement among her peers. She's been blackmailed by at least one former, maybe not partner, where things seem to have gone south, and now there are serious accusations. She's hearing voices and maybe having scary dreams. There's a new girl at work and she just can't help herself, and her tendency to bully her Gen Z music students for speaking up in class about whether they should respect the legacies of problematic old white guy composers has now gone viral on social media to make her look like the bad guy. She's on the yes side, despite being a U-Haul lesbian herself, and believes this means everyone else should just have to get over it too, so guess where that's going. In other words, it's not so much a question of is Lydia Tarr in trouble, but rather how hard is she gonna fall? What comeuppance will the film decide is ironic enough, and how many big moments will this whole production afford Blanchett to throw her acting range across the grid like Mariah blowing out LEDs on a soundboard just to prove she still can? So yeah, after sitting out movie making since Little Children back in 2006, wow, that's longer than James Cameron on Avatar even, Todd Field decides the best reason to come back now is building an entire movie out of a teenager on Reddit level gotcha to the sexual harassment debate. Oh yeah? Well, what would your feminism say if it was a woman harassing other women? Checkmate, libtard. And well, these days, that's apparently exactly the depth of thought that qualifies one to say run Twitter. Whether or not it's something you can build a whole movie around is mixed at best. Fortunately, Tar is appropriately titled, and that despite the topicality and somewhat juvenile grasp of it, it doesn't seem to have much interest in actually engaging with the hornet's nest that it's gawking at offsides, other than as a vector for setting up a scenario for Blanchett to go 11 as a post-feminist feminine variant on the great man but not a good man who'd rather lose their mind than lose entitlement and instead loses both shtick that the art house movie scene so loves. It's the entire routine too. Oh, I like them. Oh no, they're kind of terrible. Oh wow, they're going nuts and it's compelling. Oh no, they went nuts and now it's sad. You know, awards bait stuff all the way, laid out and specifically weighted to bait a specific catch of a slew of Best Actress nods sure to come rolling in. And for all of my own reflexive snark, I did like it. You can see every beat of it coming a mile away. You've seen this story a dozen times, save for the, hey, now played by Cate Blanchett, that's new aspect. And if you know your genre and tonal signifiers, gotta love an entire substrata of movies where characters listen to actual NPR broadcasts in the background and people from the New Yorker play themselves, so half the audience can go, oh good, hun, we're in the right theater. You'll know every beat right down to the surreal, dreamy parts kicking in and the ambient score starts dropping out, letting you know what part of the movie it is. But you know, as I brought up a moment ago, that's exactly as true of Avatar 2 or whatever the next Marvel or Disney or whatever thing is. Formula is formula for a reason, and if I don't fault it in big movies, it would be exactly hypocritical to fault it in small ones. So I definitely can't mark it down here. Like I said, it works. The fact is, it's all a very mannered, meticulously laid out arena and set of targets for Blanchett to take aim and knock over, and she does. She hits them one after the other. It's a real challenge to play someone who's really dislikable but also pretty compelling and gets to stay on board, and she carries it off while the film stays crisp and quick by leaping over the necessary beats of exposition as if to say, you all get what most likely happened next, right? Okay, let's just go on to something more interesting something that's going to happen a little later instead. This is the kind of movie that generally has a pretty small audience until it turns into an awards movie or a big critical darling, which it now is, which in turn means people complaining that nobody goes to see movies for grown-ups anymore, which is not my scene. You know, go see whatever you want, but for what it's worth, I can't really call this the most original, groundbreaking thing ever, but it is good and it's worth seeing for the performance stuff alone. So split it down, call it a 7 out of 10, even once the discourse starts making you feel like it's something you were supposed to have seen, still worth seeing.